The Game Awards have a little bit of controversy again prior to the show, which is happening in the not too distant future now at this stage. Of Essentially, the Game Awards were in trouble previously because of the fact that Hogwarts Legacy did not get nominated for Game of the Year, which we talked about that here on the introduction of one of the streams not that long ago. 2023 was really a very compelling year for gaming. There were so many amazing releases coming the entire year, banger after banger after banger, and it something had to get left on the cutting room floor, unfortunately, and Hogwarts Legacy ended up being that game. Now it's in trouble because of how they've really been deciding to classify things in categories to be nominated and voted for. And this is something that I'm glad that's kind of come up in the conversation as of late, because I was scratching my head a little bit too when I was going through the voting process. Anyone can go to the website. I'm not like a panelist or anything like that. And if you go to the website for the Game Awards, there are many outlets that are included in this where they have people dedicated to these from these outlets to be able to nominate games for the categories. I don't think Jeff Keighley is one that really goes out there and is like, yeah, these are the games that I want to have on all these lists. No. So one thing that leapt out to me right away was the fact that Super Mario Brothers Wonder was up for like best multiplayer game of the year. I understand it has a multiplayer mode. I can see that it's probably really fun, but multiplayer game of the year sounds extremely odd to me. I mean, it's primarily a single player affair, right? The other category that left me scratching my head a little bit was the best like ongoing game. And when you hear ongoing game, it means a game that's continually supported, updated, never really leaves development, right? We're talking about games like Counter-Strike and Fortnite and Genshin Impact and all those kinds of games, League of Legends, World of Warcraft, all that kind of stuff. Cyberpunk 2077 somehow made that list, and I can't for the life of me figure out why. I understand why some people may have not nominated it for that category. It's because, right, the game launched a few years ago, nearly 3 years ago now, I think, in a state that was busted and buggy to say the least. It was basically literally broken on consoles, regardless of whether you were playing on last gen or if you were playing on modern machines. The PC, the experience was a lot better than the console platforms, but it was still a hot mess. And besides, the game was missing so many features that were advertised ahead of launch. It felt like an empty hollow shell of a game to me at the time. Beautiful game, sure, but it just didn't belong there. It had a bit of a resurgence over the last few years. They've been trying to make amends, to make things right, to patch it up so that it's in a playable state. And they finally released a massive update this year, which includes a lot of quality of life features, changes how some features and mechanics in the game work, and it just basically feels like the game it always should have been. Plus, they released a you have to pay for it expansion in the name of Phantom Liberty. It's a great year for Cyberpunk 2077 and its, redemption arc, if you want to call it that. Unfortunately, it's not an ongoing game. It's a single player game, and the only reason why it's been updated and patched as heavily as it has been was because the game was in a non-working state at launch. Releasing an expansion does not make it an ongoing game. But the real category that has made a lot of people upset is best indie game. Because one of the games called Dave the Diver, a lot of people would assume, hey, this is an indie game, right? If you're not familiar with Dave the Diver, look it up. But one of my buddies who knows gaming inside and out has told me very recently, well, not so recently, but over the summer, that it's the best game that they've played all year. So I imagine if they were able to pick a game of the year, that would probably be it. Although they did enjoy Zelda Tears of the Kingdom quite a bit too. Getting a little sidetracked here, though. The point is, Dave the Diver, while in its gameplay mechanics, its 2D game style, its graphical presentation, while it may come off looking like an indie game, it's not an indie game. This was something that was created under the umbrella of a company that pulled in well over $1 billion in profits last year. This is not an indie game. And so Jeff Keighley, he came out and he responded to a lot of this criticism, and I really would have appreciated it a lot more if he just stepped up to the plate and he owned that he fucked up and that they're going to make some changes. And while they have acknowledged that they're looking to do some things a little differently the next time around, that doesn't really resolve this particular issue. And honestly, if I was Jeff, I should feel a little embarrassed, I would think. I mean, you've been doing the Game Awards for years now. And if you don't really have any sort of like itemized lists, categorically as to what makes each category what it is, and you're just allowing people to nominate whatever they want from this large panel of outlets out there that you're kind of deferring to, because he does. He's like, oh, I defer to them for their judgment, for why they nominated, such a game for this category. No. And then, of course, he goes on to explain things further by going, but, what is an indie game, really? Is it the graphical art style that makes it an indie game? Is it how much money you put into development that makes it an indie game? Is it the size of your team that makes it an indie game? Is it an indie game if it blah, 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 blah? No, that's not it. Like if it was that loose of a definition, then why even have an indie game category? The whole reason why you have an indie game category is because a lot of people, when they think about their games of the year, they're going to think about the big AAA blockbuster smashes that have been released over the course of the year. And we've seen it happen this year with games like Zelda, Baldur's Gate 3, Spider-Man 2, Alan Wake 2, Resident Evil 4, and more. Games like independent games very often are not going to make the cut. So in order to acknowledge the smaller developers out there who are not backed by huge companies, you have a category called Best Indie Game of the Year. To put a game in there that was created under the umbrella of a corporation that makes mega dollars annually, it just defeats the entire purpose of having that category and giving out that kind of an award. It's pretty disgraceful. So what I really would have liked to have seen, as I said, is for Jeff Keighley to just come out and own it and be like, yeah, you guys are right. We really didn't think this through as well as we could have. We understand how this seems insensitive to actual independent development teams, and we'll do better next year. I hope that you understand that at this point, it's a little too late to change course. The show's all set. So we're sorry, but we will take all this feedback this year into consideration, and we will make some changes next year. That's what needs to happen. But I'm not really hearing that. Instead, Jeff Keighley comes out and he's just like, well, what is an indie game really? Is an indie game bullshit, dude? Just own it. Stop. Like, I think he's a genuinely nice dude. And out of all the personalities out there that like are front and center in the gaming industry that people know by name and by look when they see him, I think he's a swell guy, sure, but own your mistakes, man. Own your mistakes. The fact that you have so many categories that are getting breached by titles that do not belong to be nominated in there. And if you're just going to fall back on like, well, that's what they nominated. I'm also a little concerned about these multiple news outlets, video gaming outlets that are a part of this voting panel, this nomination panel. If they nominate a game when they should know better, like Dave the Diver, for a category like Best Indie Game. I don't know. Do better next year, Jeff.